Welcome to Broad Eye, the podcast that explores knowledge gaps in ophthalmology and eye care.
Welcome, everyone. Here's another episode of the Broad Eye podcast. I'm the host, Bruno Fernandez, and then today I have the honor to have as a guest Bjorn Stenvers, the CEO of the Eye Care Foundation. How are you doing today, Bjorn?
Hi, I'm doing very well. Thank you indeed. And I'm happy to join. Thank you so much for inviting.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm excited about our chat. You seem to have a very diverse professional life, so I'm sure there's going to be an interesting conversation. But before we dive into your professional achievements, tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and where you're born, where you lived, and where did you end up?
Well, a little bit about myself. I was born in Arnhem. Many Canadians know Arnhem because of the film The Bridge Too Far, but also because many grandfathers maybe fought against some bad people. So I was born in Arnhem in the Netherlands, and from there on I started my existence. In the end, I studied in Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands, sort of the Florida in the Netherlands. And I studied maybe too many studies in the end because I just love the academic life. And that's also why I still teach at several universities, among which Amsterdam and Moscow. All is now during pandemic on distance and digital. Yeah, and before the Eye Care Foundation, I used to be a director at the museum department at UNESCO in Paris, which is called ICOM. And now I switched to be already since 2018 to be the CEO of the Eye Care Foundation.
Yeah, this is actually pretty interesting because most people we see they're involved somehow in the vision community as a philanthropist. They seem to have a background in ophthalmology or anything related to eye care, or they themselves have some sort of visual disability or someone they know. So you came from a very distant professional life there, taking care of museums, to being the CEO of a philanthropic ophthalmology organization. So what made you make the change, and what was the thing that drove you to this?
Well, when I start with a word called looking, and I will try to explain via this first word, looking, maybe the similarities of UNESCO, and now I, of course, belong to the WHO, but also, by the way, with educational programs, sometimes with UNESCO. But I'll try to explain that it's not so far off. Maybe looking at the delivery and the environmental impact, I think if you look at news tragedies and crossroads, they are needed, to answer all the needs. And if you look at the SDGs defined by the UN, which also, of course, embraced by their departments, WHO and UNESCO, they can only be met if we work together. And this is actually my thing, to always work together. And both WHO and UNESCO, they both aim to become more impact focused, which of course is a strive. But yeah, this is what they do. And if issues are not being addressed collectively, it automatically results in underperforming, which is a horror, of course. And museums, as well as the eye care, they both face complexity on many things like inclusiveness regarding cure, treatment, or survival in a market driven, in a global society. And this market drivenness is a burden to both, I think, museums as well as eye care as a sector. And both they face that they're not up to it yet, or that they always have a tensionable relation. They need each other. They need to learn from each other. They need to share with each other things, and one sponsors the other. But it's always interesting to see these both worlds. And for this, I don't think that museums and eye care differ that much.
And the Eye Care Foundation, what are their goals, in terms of doing good? Because different foundations do different things. They're focused on different aspects and different needs. So as far as the Eye Care Foundation goes, like, how do they strive like to make a difference?
Yeah, well, if you look totally to the end, we of course don't want to be necessary at all. So if you look totally to our horizon, we envision, of course, a world where people are enabled by good eyesight to attain their full potential, and we are not necessary anymore. That's the thing. Until that time, we need a mission, and you could say that our mission is to eliminate avoidable blindness and vision impairment, which belongs now also to it, in order to support people to become productive citizens, of course, in the countries where they live, and to contribute to the socio-economic growth of their societies. It's a whole mouthful, but this is sort of what I would say. This is our thing until the time that we are not needed anymore. And yeah, you ask about our goals. If I will put it in long-term goals, the avoidable blindness elimination is there. You can also calculate them in numbers, of course. For us, we love to be operating in remote areas, and then second long-term goal could be the effective cataract treatments, which are very calculatable, of course, even per eye. And the same we could also do for the refractive error prevention. This is maybe needed to be break up in a few numbers, but one of them could be screenings, another one could be to prevent the refractive error either by glasses or by treatment.
And I saw that you do most of, the Eye Care Foundation, right? Like do most of their work in developing countries. And how does it work? Like logistically, does the foundation send a team like to do those like missions, or do you work with local healthcare providers?
Well, since 1984, we already exist, and we've been founded actually in Nepal by what we today would call expats, Dutch expats. But in the end, we needed a headquarters somewhere else, and they moved to the Netherlands where they came from. In 2008, we merged with another foundation who was dealing not only in Nepal, but they dealt with the area of the Mekong Delta, which is in Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam. And after that merge, we immediately had a few countries to take care of in our mission and our operation activities. And ever since that time, we also have people on the ground in those countries, depending, of course, on projects, because we want to keep our overhead as low as possible. But yeah, we have offices in Tanzania and Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and Nepal, and in the Netherlands, due to fundraising activities and awareness preparedness. But as a CEO, I sometimes can have an opinion, even though we do everything collectively together, which is, it's the 2021 mentality. So we all do our things together in developing strategies and all that. So what we aim for is a high spending of all we get as fundraising and donations. That could be on the projects I just mentioned, but sometimes we also need awareness. Awareness is an educational thing, but it could also be to prevent things, or to treat eyes better. But it could also be to attract people to our screen camps. And you need to imagine that sometimes we are really up in the mountains or remote areas. And I don't think I need to explain to the Canadian people what a remote area is.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
I know. But yeah, we also have those in the countries where we are active, especially in the Himalaya or in Tanzania, we have this. And sometimes people need to walk for days to one of our screening camps, which are already also those ophthalmologists and supporting staff is also walking already for days, and they meet each other somewhere in the middle. So either we do that at treatments immediately, but at minimum we try to do the screenings there. Yeah, so those kind of things need local staff, and sometimes because you can't be too far off with an office. And in every country we work actually with local partners. So in Nepal, where we also have an office, we also work with local partners in government, but also together with others, we build up one of the biggest hospitals in Nepal, which is the Himalaya Eye Hospital. Actually, it's funny because it's the lowest country in the world, which is the Netherlands, built the highest eye hospital in the world. But yeah, at least we do these kind of things. But yeah, those activities. So we have an office. From the office, we have partners, and most of the time those are big hospitals or government affiliate. And from there on, we do the remote area support, which accidentally sometimes takes days to reach people.
And before a project starts in a specific country or region, who initiates the conversation? Is it like the Eye Care Foundation that identifies an area in need, and then you start reaching out to people that could help, or is it them that reach out to the foundation asking for help?
I have to say, based on the rich history, where I now can give more activities to at the Eye Care Foundation, I have to say that we do most of the time work on the need which comes to us. So people ask for a specific project, or they display a need, or they administer something which is happening somewhere. Then of course our country directors most of the time are the first on the spot, on the site, and they have the first conversations. And if their first judgment comes to the conclusion that we need to make it into a project, then first of all they try to figure out if all our terms are there, what kind of things are not there. And then in the end, they formulate or develop a project out of it. Is that an answer to your question?
No, it answers. And then I have a follow-up question on that. So who can reach the foundation for help then? Is it like ophthalmologists that see the need, or maybe it's a patient that has sort of like a support group that it is? So is the foundation open to pretty much like anybody that can reach out to establish like some sort of program, or is there a specific connection channel, for make things happen?
The basics is everybody, but our experience brought us to an online fill-in program sometimes. Actually, because many people reach us, and everybody, there's always a person who reaches us. It could be a person on behalf of an organization, or a person who spots something, or who has a need of an organization he or she manage. But if I look on a whole, it's most of the time an institute or a foundation who is asking for the need. But sometimes it could be a lion club who together wants to build an eye unit because they know that in the local area it's needed, and they seek us for, content-wise help, or they seek us for all kind of project advice. So that's also sometimes the case. But most of the time it's an institute or a foundation. And more, if I look at the situations during pandemic also, I see that it's also the government who knocks on our door. We have, like many NGOs in the eye care sector, we have regular meetings with the ministers of health of every country. One reason is because we always need our permit to be active in the country, to be solid. But next to this, we also always want to know if we can help more. And one compliment I have to say to the eye care sector is that it's one of the most well-organized sectors I ever met in the world. Everybody knows each other. They're all organized within a cluster organization or umbrella organization, which is called the IAPB, the International Prevention of Blindness, which is let's say, sort of a department at WHO, just for eyes. And because it's so well organized, countries, they are not divided by the NGOs with the minister, because that will be oligopoly, I think. But if you look at on the whole, it is just sitting around the table and who does best and how can we all, serve the need in the country or the area. And this is where I see that the NGOs in the eye care sector are really working together, as I've never seen before, not even in the museum sector where they knowingly works together, but at the eye care sector, I've never seen this before. So competition is not a word in the eye care sector, which is interesting.
Yeah, no, indeed, like the ophthalmological community, it's a very tight group, a small world. Everybody knows one another all over the world. So you mentioned that you need permits, like in every country you get into, and obviously the government needs to be involved in that. Do they usually, is it usually a challenge? Like, I mean, are they usually friendly and helpful, or is it more that, or is more like a bump in the road and a lot of red tape?
It's 2021. I think the Potter era is gone. I think the Matter era already started, and the listeners are maybe hearing your kids on the background, which I think is a good way of going through the pandemic. Work-life balance.
Yeah, I can't avoid them anymore.
No, because I love it. It's fine. Also, listeners, they have the same situation when they listen to us. They have the same. So that's okay. But if I look, what I would like and love to leave behind for that generation, actually, is that to leave a better place than I met it when I came in. And one of the things I see is that this whole Matter area is not about fighting so much. If I ask my students, what do you think about a border? They sometimes say, it's super old-fashioned. Why should we have this limitation? Everybody knows that it's good for something. And then if I look at the permits, so I go with this introduction to is your question, answer to your question. So if I look at the permissions to go inside, and the contract, sometimes every country is different, but we always meet bureaucracy somewhere. And of course, a lot of corruption you need to avoid a lot of times. Sometimes the political situation and the border area thing comes in, and it sometimes limits or is a burden on the way of the activities you want to do. I can't mention the country. Sometimes you're kicked out of a country because they are at that moment maybe a little bit anti-US because worldwide there is something going on at that moment, and then all the international NGOs are kicked out of a country. This happens on a regular basis, not only on the continent of Asia, but it's also happening in the continent of Africa. It doesn't help if you want to cure and to support so many people in need. But sometimes it happens. And, it's not a unfamiliar thing because also Canadians watch the news. So, everybody knows what's going on in the world and which kind of political systems do this kind of things. Most of the time it's a hierarchical system. But it happens. But you need to cope with it. You learn how to cope with it and then go on with your activities again.
That's cool. More on a personal side now, you're still involved in the museum world, right? You still have roles as in the boards of like those associations, and how it is, like, I mean, to manage like seemingly different occupations.
Now, as I said, both sectors face the same market drivenness, which during pandemic we maybe realize that it's nuts that we strive to this market drivenness economy, which always needs to grow. Back to basic is one of those things people mention in many interviews now. So if I see the museums as well as the eye care, for me, it's okay to have these two things. And sometimes work is hard, and then you have to load and charge somewhere else. And sometimes, going to a museum, visiting it, like you all do. By the way, I also visit Montreal some years ago when my wife was performing there in your jazz club. So I also visited, your lovely museums and the parks. So, that's also a charging moment. And in my case, I'm very happy and sometimes privileged that I'm also in a board of a museum. And that means that you sometimes can see the museum at its beautiest or at its at the nice moments of an opening or something. It always gives me a pleasure. And looking at art, enjoying art needs eyes. Not always, because I know that many blind people have special programs within museums to also experience museums by their hands or by sounds or smell. But I can enjoy both worlds in a very easy way, in a good balance. And by the way, the teaching helps me also to stay sharp, because students, we've all been there. Students are students. They ask that, I can't say naive, but they keep you at the edge of you always need to update yourself on knowledge. You always, if you don't know, you very quickly need to find out for them. Their essays are always very good and to the point. So it's easy to enjoy it, because international life and also when you work internationally, and then also these students are international, that also brings new information to town, and you can use it always. Either the information from the museums, you can use it for the eye care, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, Bjorn, as we are kind of like coming to a wrap, so you talked already about people that work, right? For the Eye Care Foundation, those missions that you have in different countries. How can people help? Do they need to be an ophthalmologist or eye care professional? What kind of help do you need, and how can they find the openings that you have?
Well, first of all, if I can break it up in a few things, is it okay?
Yeah, sure. Take your time.
If I break it up in a few things, so one of the things where people could really help is by listening to our message and maybe learn from it and treat the eyes better. Because whoever you are, we all will meet things with the eye. Around 35, 40, people start to get glasses. Maybe on an earlier stage, you already have something. Around the elderly age, you maybe get cataract, etc. So we all will face something to do with the eyes. So when you invest in this sector or in us, you just invest indirectly in this in your own life. So this is the first thing. The second thing I would like to ask, if people get the information from this program and all the other programs, become an ambassador and treat your eyes like you want to treat your eyes. Treat them best. Use clean water. Don't rub your eyes so much, and all the other things. Also be aware of how the global situation is, because I always see many Canadians traveling around, not so much to the US, but to the other countries. And if you travel around, be this ambassador again, and know that 2 of the 8 billion people roughly on this planet, 2.2 billion people have something with the eyes, and then 1 billion does not have an access to the healthcare we have in Canada or in the Netherlands, which is outrageous, And of all these people, a few 100 million people have cataracts. And I know that, some of the sources you can use to backfire these kind of numbers I mentioned, you can find on the IAPB.org or at the WHO. Just to mention a few more, a few 100 million have this cataract, and a little bit above 80% is curable just by an operation of 12 minutes by an ophthalmologist. It's just a matter of money, and it's just a matter of time.
And will also.
Sorry?
And will.
And sometimes also resource. You have like 1,200 ophthalmologists in Canada, we just discussed before the program. But just to mention some countries, how many ophthalmologists they have. You have 40 million Canadians roughly, and around this 1,200 ophthalmologists. But Tanzania, for instance, has 60 million people and just 70 ophthalmologists.
Yeah.
Rwanda has just 17 ophthalmologists on 30 million people. It's nuts, and I can go on. A comparable number of ophthalmologists is maybe Vietnam, which I know is roughly the same amount of ophthalmologists, but they have around 100 million Vietnamese, so they have 2.5 times more people. So everywhere is a need for the professional touching the eye or curing the eye. So that's a need. So I promised to break it up in several things. So first part was to know and to have this knowledge and become an ambassador. The second one is to find people who help us cure and to inspire other people to become an ophthalmologist in the future. So maybe the future generation, which is on the background sometimes in this program, we need to inspire them to become our future help. And then to make all of this possible now and tomorrow, people can always donate to the Eye Care Foundation and to, of course, all my colleagues. It all comes to the same source, but the eyecarefoundation.nl.eu, but if you Google, you can still find it. You can always donate or discuss with us how you want to contribute. For us, in many ways, it's possible sometimes.
Yeah, we're gonna. When that episode comes live, of course, we're gonna share like all the links, in the webpage, so people can easily reach out to you.
Oh, thank you.
Bjorn, it's been a pleasure. I won't take much more of your time. It was a great chat. It was a nice meeting you, and congrats on what you do. Need more people like you doing things like that.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck with your program. And it was very lovely to meet the Canadian people who I really admire so much, especially there in Montreal. Thank you, and I can't wait to travel again and to sit along the river at the amusement park and drink a beer again.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait to travel. No, normal life is it's coming.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
And that concludes today's episode of the Broad Eye Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Of course, ratings and reviews are always welcome. And you can certainly share this episode with any of your colleagues or friends who might enjoy it. Thanks for listening.